The silence of the Isdalen Valley, a rugged and lonely stretch of land just outside the city of Bergen, Norway, was broken on a cold afternoon, November 29th, 1970. It was a Sunday. Two university students, a man and a woman, were hiking through the rocky, treeless terrain, a place known locally as Death Valley, for its harsh and forbidding nature. As they picked their way through the stones and low shrubs, they came upon a scene that was both bizarre and horrifying. Lying in a shallow depression in the ground, partly hidden between two large rocks, was the badly burned corpse of a woman. She was lying on her back, her arms stretched out, her legs slightly bent. The body was surrounded by a strange collection of items: an empty bottle of St. Halvard liqueur, two plastic water bottles, a rubber boot, a burnt passport, and a small, partly melted medicine bottle. The scene was so strange, so deliberately arranged, that the students at first thought it was some kind of macabre art installation or a prank. But the smell of burnt flesh and the grim reality of the charred remains quickly told them this was no joke. They ran to a nearby cottage and alerted the police. This discovery would mark the beginning of one of the most perplexing and enduring unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. A case that would involve coded notes, multiple false identities, and a trail across Europe that pointed directly into the shadowy world of Cold War espionage. The woman would become known to the world as the Isdal Woman. The police and a forensic team arrived quickly at the remote location. The initial examination at the scene only deepened the mystery. The woman was naked from the waist down, and her clothes, which were found scattered around the body, were partially burned. A skirt, a sweater, a scarf, a coat, and a pair of stockings were all found nearby. A hat was discovered further down the slope. Crucially, all the labels had been meticulously cut or torn from every single item of her clothing. This was not the act of a random attacker. This was a deliberate, methodical attempt to erase her identity. Her fingerprints had been burned away, and soot in her lungs confirmed the terrifying fact that she had been alive when the fire started. The official autopsy would later determine the cause of death as a combination of burns and carbon monoxide poisoning from inhalation of smoke. But it also revealed something even more sinister. She had significant injuries to her neck, including a fracture to the cornea of the thyroid cartilage, strongly suggesting she had been strangled or subjected to severe violence before being set on fire. This was not a suicide or an accident. It was a murder staged to look like a suicide or an accident. The police launched a massive investigation. They scoured the area and found two suitcases that had been left in the left luggage locker at the Bergen railway station. These suitcases contained a treasure trove of clues, yet each clue only seemed to weave a tighter web of mystery. Like her clothing, all the labels had been removed from the dozens of items inside. The collection was that of a well-traveled woman. Wigs of various colors, cosmetics, cash from several different countries, clothes, shoes, and a pair of fake eyeglasses. There was also a curious notepad. When detectives examined it closely, they found faint impressions of handwriting on the pages, the ghost of notes that had been written on the sheet above and then torn out. Using pencil shading, a technique called indented writing analysis, they were able to recover a list of dates and places. It was an itinerary that traced a journey across Europe in the months leading up to her death. Cities like Paris, Brussels, Geneva, Vienna, and Munich were all there. The notes also contained a series of cryptic codes, such as Le Hotel de la Pikes, Midi 174, 10.23, and 8.21 NK. These were not random scribbles. They appeared to be a system of notation, perhaps for meeting times, locations, or hotel rooms. The investigation into her identity revealed a woman of many faces. Through painstaking work, police were able to trace her movements backwards from east. They discovered she had been in Bergen for about 2 weeks before her death. She had checked into 2 different hotels, using 2 different names. First, she stayed at the Hotel Hordeheimen as Elizabeth Lienhaffer. A few days later, she moved to the Hotel Norga Registering Astinaviv Lancier in Bodkasis. She presented a passport, but these were undoubtedly forgeries. Witnesses described her as being in her mid-30s to mid-40s, about 5'4" tall, with dark brown hair, an olive complexion, and distinctive features, widely spaced eyes and a gap between her 2 front teeth. She was well-dressed, polite, and spoke multiple languages, though her German and English were noted to have a heavy, possibly French or Belgian, accent. She was always seen alone. She paid for everything in cash and seemed nervous and cautious, often looking over her shoulder. On November 19th, she had purchased the 2 suitcases and the St. Halvard liqueur bottle found near her body. Her final known movements were on November 23rd, when she was seen leaving the Hotel Norge with her suitcases. She left one suitcase at the train station and took the other with her. She then took a bus to the outskirts of the city, towards the Isdalen Valley. A witness, a man gathering leaves, saw a well-dressed woman matching her description, walking with a well-dressed man in the area that day. This was the last time she was seen alive. The police expanded their search across Europe, following the itinerary from the notepad. It was a trail of aliases and disposable identities. They found she had traveled under at least 8 different names, all with variations of the same initials, F and L. In Hinaba, she was Finia Lancia. In Paris, Vera Joral. She always stayed in medium-priced hotels, paid in cash, and never stayed anywhere for more than a few days. She seemed to be constantly on the move, a ghost flitting from one European city to another. Forensic analysis of her possessions provided more puzzling details. The wigs and cosmetics showed she was adept at changing her appearance. The glasses had plain glass lenses. They were a disguise. Analysis of her teeth and bones suggested she came from the region where France, Germany, and Luxembourg meet. But this was never confirmed. Isotope analysis of her hair, a technique that can trace a person's geographical history, would later reveal a life of extensive travel, including periods in South America and Eastern Europe, further complicating the picture. Who was this woman who had no name, no past, and who traveled with a collection of wigs and multiple passports? The most tantalizing clues were the coded notes. Cryptographers from the Norwegian military intelligence and police tried for months to break the code. Some parts seemed straightforward. El Hotel de la Pikes likely referred to a hotel of that name. Midi 174 could have been a room number or a time related to the Midi train station in Brussels. NK was speculated to be an abbreviation for Nahat Konto Night account, or a reference to a specific contact. But without the key, the full meaning of the codes remained locked away. The most widely accepted theory, then and now, is that the Isdal woman was a spy. The Cold War was at its peak in 1970. Norway, a NATO member sharing a border with the Soviet Union, was a hotbed of espionage activity. Her meticulous trade, craft removing labels, using multiple aliases, paying in cash, changing her appearance was classic spy behavior. The coded notes were her operational instructions, or her records of dead drops and meetings. Her journey through neutral and NATO-aligned cities fit the pattern of an intelligence courier or an agent running a network of contacts. The nature of her death brutal, staged, and designed to prevent identification points to a professional assassination, the kind carried out by intelligence agencies to silence a defector, eliminate a Hoagie agent, or send a message. Other theories have been proposed over the decades. Was she a victim of a criminal organization? A fugitive from a terrible past? A participant in a complex international fraud? But these explanations fail to account for the sheer sophistication of her tradecraft and the geopolitical context of her travels. The spy theory remains the most compelling. In 2016, the Norwegian National Criminal Investigation Service, known as Kripos, reopened the case. They exhumed her body from her grave in Bergen's Malendal Cemetery, where she had been buried under a headstone that read, "Dead in Primera, Isdalen Osia. Kavin November 1970 * death in Isdalen, unknown woman." November 1970, using modern forensic techniques, they hoped to extract DNA and perform more advanced isotope testing to finally pinpoint her origins. They also commissioned a facial reconstruction to show the world what she looked like. The results of the DNA analysis suggested she was likely of European descent, possibly from Germany or France, and the isotope analysis confirmed her extensive travels, but a specific country of origin, a name, or a family connection remained elusive. The new investigation generated fresh leads and renewed public interest, but the core of the mystery held fast. The story of the Isdal woman is a 50,000-word novel written in Ashen code. It is a story that begins with a gruesome discovery in a silent valley and spirals outwards to touch the secret heart of the Cold War. It is a story of a woman who erased herself so completely that even in death, she remains a collection of questions. Who was she working for? Was she a KGB agent, a CIA asset, A Mossad operative, or a player in a more obscure intelligence game? What information was she carrying? Who was the well-dressed man seen with her in Isdalen? And was he her killer? The bottles, the liqueur, the scattered clothing were they part of a ritual, or simply a hasty and failed attempt to make her death look like a tragic picnic gone wrong? The answers died with her on that cold mountainside. The Isdal woman took her secrets to her grave, leaving behind only the echoes of her many names and the ghostly script in a notepad. A silent testament to a life lived in the shadows and a death that remains, more than half a century later, a perfect and chilling mystery.